Gemini is the sign of the quick mind, the hungry curiosity, the sharp tongue that can turn a single sentence into a spark. It's the archetype everyone recognizes for duality, intelligence, and the strange gift of adapting to almost any room without losing its edge. But here's what most people never say out loud. Not every Gemini hums on the same frequency. Two people can share the same symbol, the same reputation, even the same Gemini stereotypes, and still move through life like they were built from different weather. Because May Geminis and June Geminis are not simply two versions of the same thing. They can be profoundly different in how they think, how they feel, how they attach, how they detach, and how they protect their inner world. One can be pure impulse, words arriving before the thought is fully formed, feelings flashing before they've been examined, actions taken before consequences have finished introducing themselves. The other can be quiet and calculating, reading the room like a language, measuring the temperature of people's intentions, storing data in silence, and only then choosing a move with surgical timing. Both are Gemini, yet one is often misunderstood and the other is rarely deciphered. If you've ever felt like people keep projecting a version of you that doesn't match who you actually are, or if you've noticed another Gemini reacting in the complete opposite way to the same situation you're facing, that isn't contradiction. That's birth timing. That's the difference between a mind that processes out loud and a mind that processes behind the eyes. And once you truly see these differences, you won't be able to unsee them because they explain too much. Your patterns, your clashes, your strengths, your blind spots, even the kind of love that feels natural to you. Subscribe to Astro Gemini now so you don't miss the next messages the zodiac keeps whispering through patterns, people, and timing. In this journey, you're about to discover 5 key differences between May Geminis and June Geminis. Differences that shape how you communicate, how you metabolize emotion, how you handle conflict, how you bond in relationships, and why people either can't keep up with you or can't read you at all. One of these differences explains why some Geminis burn bright and fast, while others stay calm, strategic, and mentally untouchable. Another reveals why one type attracts chaos, while the other attracts silence. And the final difference is the one most people never expect, not even many Geminis themselves, because it sits beneath personality, beneath habits, beneath mood. It sits in the core of how you handle being understood. As you listen, I want you to make this personal. Drop a comment with your date of birth and your zodiac sign. Yes, your full birthday and your sign, because timing is the secret ingredient in every chart, and it helps this space understand you more clearly. Now let's begin where everything begins for Gemini: the mind. The first difference is the way they think. May Gemini thinking can feel like lightning. Ideas appearing fast, multiplying, transforming, disappearing, reappearing, changing outfits mid-sentence, then running off again before anyone can hold them still. It's restless, curious, impulsive in the purest way. Not reckless, but alive. A May Gemini often needs to speak in order to sort through what they're thinking. Conversation isn't just social for them. It's a mental laboratory. They discover their opinions by hearing themselves say them. They test ideas in real time. They can change their mind without shame, because to them, thinking is movement. It's exploration. It's a living process, not a finished product. This is why people sometimes accuse May Geminis of being scattered, indecisive, or contradictory. But what looks like contradiction is often just curiosity refusing to be trapped in a single lane. May Gemini minds love options. They love opening doors. They love possibilities more than conclusions, because conclusions can feel like a closed room with no windows. June Geminis, on the other hand, often think in silence. Their mind can be just as fast, but it moves differently, like a chess player, not a fireworks show. They observe first. They analyze people, environments, patterns, subtext. They don't feel the same need to show everything that passes through their head. They store it, filter it, organize it, and then, only when it matters, release it with precision. While a May Gemini verbalizes in order to understand, a June Gemini understands before they verbalize. That creates misunderstandings on both sides. A May Gemini can look at a June Gemini and think, "Why are you so distant? Why are you holding back?" Meanwhile, the June Gemini can look at the May Gemini and think, "Why are you saying everything before you know what you actually mean?" But neither is wrong. They're simply running different internal operating systems. May Gemini thinking is exploratory. It feeds on stimulation, variety, mental spice. Put them around rigid routines, heavy repetition, closed minds, and they start to suffocate. Their brilliance dims when life becomes the same day with a different date. June Gemini thinking is analytical. It seeks coherence, patterns, meaning. They don't enjoy mental waste. They notice details most people skip. A pause that lasted too long, a compliment that didn't reach the eyes, a story that changed slightly on the second telling. Their mind isn't loud, it's precise. So while one can change their mind 10 times while exploring the landscape, the other changes their mind once, after understanding the entire map. One is the wind testing every direction. The other is the current underneath the water that you don't see until you realize you've been pulled. The second difference is emotional. The biggest misunderstanding about Gemini is the belief that Gemini doesn't feel deeply. The truth is more subtle. Gemini feels quickly. Gemini feels intensely. But the way those feelings move through the body can shift depending on whether the Gemini energy is May-born or June-born. May Geminis often experience emotion in the present moment, like weather that arrives all at once. Joy can be a full-body surge. Excitement can become unstoppable momentum. Frustration can flare hot and loud. Sadness can come as a sudden drop in temperature. When something happens, the feeling rises quickly, sometimes explosively, but it often doesn't last the same way it lasts for more fixed or water-heavy signs. This isn't superficiality, it's movement. May Gemini emotion is like a wave. It rises, peaks, crashes, then recedes. They don't like being stuck in emotional mud. They prefer to breathe, pivot, redirect, and find new air. Because of that, May Geminis can seem emotionally detached, when in reality, they simply don't hoard feelings. They feel them fully, process them through motion and conversation, and then let them go. Being trapped in the past can feel like wearing wet clothes that never dry. They need emotional lightness to keep functioning, and they often heal through shifting the mind, changing the scenery, laughing, learning, moving. June Geminis often feel in a quieter, deeper way. Their emotions don't always explode. They seep in. They settle into the internal world like ink spreading through water, slowly darkening the space. A June Gemini might look calm, even indifferent, while their mind records everything. The sentence you chose, the tone, the timing, the absence, the lack of effort. The way a promise was spoken like it didn't cost anything. They may not react immediately, but the inner archive is working. They store emotional data like well-labeled files. And because they store it, they don't forget easily. This is why June Geminis can surprise people when they finally distance themselves. From the outside, it can look sudden, but internally, it's rarely sudden. It's the final page of a long private book. They felt too much in silence, too long, without evidence that things would change. While a May Gemini expresses emotion by talking, laughing, venting, or changing the subject, a June Gemini can express emotion by pulling away and observing. One reacts emotionally now, the other reacts emotionally later, and this creates conflict. A May Gemini might believe the situation is resolved because the emotional storm has passed. A June Gemini might still be processing what happened, still decoding the meaning, still deciding whether it was a one-time moment or a pattern. One believes moving forward is enough. The other needs understanding first, then acceptance, then release. Neither is cold, neither is heartless. They're simply protecting themselves in different ways. And if you're still with me here, tap the like button now, not as a habit, but as a signal, because it helps this message reach the Geminis who've spent their whole life being labeled wrong by people who never learned how to read them. The third difference shows up in relationships, where Gemini's mind and heart have to share the same room. Both May and June Geminis love with their minds, but they give themselves in very different rhythms. May Geminis often fall in love through immediate exchange. Conversation is foreplay. Humor is bonding. A relationship needs movement, lightness, curiosity, a feeling that life is still expanding. They want to talk about everything and nothing, to jump between topics without judgment, to feel mentally alive with someone. When they get interested, they can show it quickly. Messages, ideas, invitations, presence, closeness that feels easy and natural. Because of that, people sometimes interpret them as inconsistent when the energy changes. But often, the truth is simpler. They love as long as the mental connection stays alive. When the exchange becomes repetitive, heavy, controlling, or emotionally claustrophobic, they pull back. Not because they lack feeling, but because they can't breathe. For a May Gemini, love cannot feel like a prison. They will choose freedom over security if security starts demanding the death of their curiosity. And they won't always explain it in dramatic terms. Sometimes they just drift, because drifting feels safer than fighting for air. June Geminis are usually more selective from the beginning. They watch before they invest. They analyze consistency, emotional depth, intention, alignment between words and actions. They don't always fall fast, but when they fall, it's because they decided the connection has weight, enough weight to deserve a place in their life. They may not reveal everything right away. They build trust slowly, often in silence, through observation. This type of Gemini doesn't need constant contact to feel connected. They need consistency. They need truth. They need the quiet proof that someone is real, even when nobody is watching. When they sense emotional games, superficiality, or instability, they begin to close, softly at first, like a door that you don't notice is shutting until the light disappears. And once they close, they rarely reopen. So the pattern becomes clear. May Gemini can enter quickly and exit quickly. June Gemini takes time to enter and even longer to leave. One loves through exchange. The other loves through depth. Conflict happens when May Gemini feels the other is too distant, and June Gemini feels the other is too unstable. But neither is wrong. They're seeking emotional security in different places. Deep down, both want true connection. One needs movement to love. The other needs silence to trust. The fourth difference appears in conflict, where Gemini's nervous system reveals its habits. Both May and June Geminis hate prolonged tension, but they handle tension in opposite ways. May Geminis tend to react on impulse. When something bothers them, they speak up. They question. They argue. They want to clear the air immediately. Their conflict style is verbal, direct, intense in the moment, because they would rather release the energy now than carry resentment later. For them, Silence is suffocating. Silence feels like a locked room. They need exchange, even if it's uncomfortable, to feel the situation moving toward resolution. This is why May Geminis can be called reactive or dramatic. But their intention is often clarity, not cruelty. Once they say what they need to say, the emotional charge dissolves, and they can move forward with surprising lightness. To them, the chapter feels closed. June Geminis often react to conflict with silence, not because they don't care, and not because they're trying to punish you. They're processing. They're analyzing tone, choice of words, intention, pattern. They step back because reacting too fast feels like losing control. They need time to organize thoughts and emotions into something accurate. That silence is frequently misunderstood as coldness, but it's internal computation. And here's the dangerous part. The June Gemini is often evaluating whether the conflict was a single event or evidence of a deeper pattern. That evaluation changes everything. While May Gemini believes a resolved conflict is one that has been talked through, June Gemini believes a resolved conflict is one that has been fully understood. One wants resolution quickly, the other wants resolution permanently. If these two don't understand each other, the May Gemini can assume everything is fine because the argument happened and the words were said. Meanwhile, the June Gemini is still observing, storing, deciding. And when they finally decide, it can feel final. The June Gemini doesn't always argue just to argue. They speak when they've reached a conclusion. And when that moment arrives, it's not a negotiation, it's a closing statement. Words are release for one. Silence is protection for the other. And when a Gemini pulls away after conflict, it's rarely immaturity. It's the mind realizing something no longer makes sense. Now we arrive at the fifth difference, the most unexpected one. And it doesn't live in intelligence, emotion, romance, or conflict style. It lives in how each Gemini deals with being understood, or not being understood. May Geminis often still believe in the possibility of being understood. They try to explain. They try to translate their thoughts, their shifting feelings, their complicated inner weather into something another person can hold. When they realize they've been misunderstood, it stings. And the instinct is to correct it, to clarify, to try again. They speak a lot, not because they love noise, but because they love bridges. Deep down, they still believe that with the right conversation, the right tone, the right moment, alignment is possible. This Gemini suffers when they feel unheard, not out of ego, but because their mind is built for exchange. They want connection, not walls. Even when they pull away, there can be a part of them that looks back, hoping someone will finally hear them clearly. June Geminis often move differently. Many of them have already outgrown the hunger to be understood by everyone. They learned a hard truth. Not everyone wants to understand. Some people only want to label. Some people only want to interpret you into a shape that makes them comfortable. And once a June Gemini learns that, something shifts. They stop explaining themselves to people who aren't listening with respect. This isn't coldness, it's maturity. A June Gemini realizes that spending energy trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you is a quiet form of self-abandonment. So they choose silence consciously. They don't need to prove who they are. They don't always correct narratives that aren't worth their time. They would rather be misunderstood than shrink themselves to fit someone else's expectations. And when they step away, it isn't escape. It's protection. So you could say it like this. The May Gemini still tries to adjust the frequency. The June Gemini changes the station. And this difference changes everything. How they close cycles, how they keep people, how they release people, how they decide who deserves access to their inner world. One suffers more by trying. The other suffers less by refusing to insist. Here's a truth most people never admit. When a Gemini stops explaining themselves, it's because they've already explained too much. It isn't indifference, it's awareness. It's the moment the mind finally chooses peace over performance. Gemini isn't confusing. Gemini is simply too deep for simple labels. Whether you're a May Gemini driven by curiosity, impulse, and the need to explore, or a June Gemini guided by strategy, observation, and intelligent silence, one thing remains. Your mind is your greatest power. And once you understand your version of that power, you stop apologizing for how you're built. So tell me in the comments your date of birth and your zodiac sign. And if you're a Gemini, say whether you feel more like a May-style Gemini or a June-style Gemini. Share how these traits show up in your life, because your experience might be the exact mirror another Gemini has been searching for. If this spoke to you, give this video a like so the message reaches more people who need language for what they've been living. And subscribe to Astro Gemini so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the universe never stops talking, and timing is one of its favorite dialects. Like the video again if you want to support this space, and subscribe if you want to keep learning the deeper patterns behind the signs. If you want to hear everything the universe has to say to you, watch these other videos on our channel.